Hi, everybody. Welcome to class today. I'm going to wait a few seconds and let everyone filter into the classroom. But it's so good to see you today. I hope it's good weather where you are. It's rainy today in Utah. I'm ready for spring. I don't know about you guys. So happy to see everybody. Hi. Oh, good. Fatima, it's nice that it's sunny in Queens. I wish I was in New York. I love New York. Hi, everybody. Alexis and Brenda, Peggy, so glad you're here. Okay, I'm going to jump in because I have a lot to cover today. So I am Shannon Kendall, first off, so you know who's talking to you. And I work at American Crafts, and I am part of the project design team here. So I have the most awesome job where I get to make beautiful things with a lot of fun paper and other fun tools and product lines that American Crafts makes. So I am here today to show you this awesome tool. It's one of my very, very favorites. It's the Works tool by We Are Memory Keepers, and it's also known as the all-in-one tool. And the reason why is you can do literally anything you want with this one tool. And I'm going to show you today in this little mini album. This is what we're going to be making today, so I'll do a quick flip through. It does this one tool is all we're going to use, makes pom-poms and tassels and bows and books and pockets and tags and envelopes. It makes pretty much anything that you want to do, file folder tabs. So quickly flipping through this, I'll show you these more in detail as we go through each page, but I wanted to give you a quick flip through. One thing that we're not going to do in this album today that this tool actually does is it also does banners as well. So I did a class earlier in the week. You can probably find it on michaels.com using this same tool, and I did a whole party. So there we did rosettes and we did banners and cupcake toppers and things like that. So we're going to do a little bit different for the mini album, but I wanted to mention that. So if you want to learn more about this tool, you can go find that other class or any of the classes Ali Dosdall has also done on them on this one tool. We just love it here at American Crafts. So the other things we're going to be using is this beautiful paper pad from Michaels. This is called Fantasy Floral. And I loved this one because I'm really loving that it's double-sided. First of all, love double-sided papers. The paper is nice and sturdy, so it works really great for pages in a mini album. And I love this combination of darks and florals right now. It's just so trendy and so fun. So I picked that up at Michaels. And then the other paper pad we're using is this Recollections paper pad of just cardstock. And this one is a neutral pack, and it's just beautiful. Has all these neutral papers, but it had the blues, the pinks, the navies, the grays, and the greens that I wanted to combine with my floral paper. The other things we're using is a set of Stiko stickers. These are foam thickers, alphabet thickers. You can see I've pulled some off already in my album. So we're going to use those today, and we're going to use this clear acrylic stamp set. This one had, again, I was looking for florals and some sprigs and some fun words to use in my mini book. So I picked this up at Michaels as well. And then we're also going to use some of these beautiful Recollections paper flowers and leaves. So if you haven't used these on a project yet, you're going to love them, and I'll show you how I use them today. Then we're going to use some ribbon and some embroidery floss and some yarn. So let's just jump in and get started. Okay, we're going to start by first constructing the cover of our book. So I don't know if you can see it, but it's just basically, I have this little slip closure that slides right out, and that's what holds my book shut. And this I just made because that pattern paper is so sturdy, I can just use it for my cover. It is a little bit flexible, so if you like your covers a little bit more sturdy, you could do it a different way than I did, or you can sandwich a piece of cardstock inside of it to give it a little bit more reinforcement. So let's start with that. Okay, so here's my first piece of paper that I pulled from the album that I'm going to use for my cover. And the first thing I'm going to do is remove this. This is a stamping plate, and we're going to use that a little later, but I'm going to move that. And then I'm going to just swing this arm out right here so that I have my full length. It's a 14-inch ruler at the top. And then I'm going to open up my trimmer. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this little strip off, just the binding strip that makes it fit in the pad. And what I do is I just look through for my cutting track right in there, and I just make sure that the little hole is past that. And then you can see how easy that is to just trim it right off. Okay, then this is actually the top of this paper, but I used it at the bottom because you can really flip it upside down and it still looks beautiful. So now I'm going to do a score line because I'm going to double this so it gives it a little more strength. And to score, you can see on the deck of the Works tool, there's all these little ridged lines. So it's just like a little scoreboard on there as well. And to use that, what I want to do is I don't want my paper being able to move under my cut track like this because I want my score lines to be really precise. So I'm going to lift this little blue piece out, flip it over, and you can see there's a ridge right here on this one side. That's going to go toward the scoring deck, okay? And then I'm just going to line up my paper. So see how it keeps it from sliding over? And now it's really easy to hold in place. Okay, the next thing we need is our scoring stylus. And it's hiding right here. So it's just tucked right into your board. You just pull that out. And we're going to score this at 6 inches, which is right in the middle of my 12 by 12 paper. And then you just run it down the track. I push this out of the way a little bit. Okay, and now I'm just going to fold this over. And I'm going to use my bone folder stylus to just crease that nice and tight. So now you can start to see the beginnings of our album. Okay, now I don't want these flapping open, so I'm just going to use a tape runner. This is just my tape runner that I use at work because we have it here, but there are tons of awesome tape runners at Michael's. You just choose one that you like, or if you don't like tape runners and you want to use a wet glue, go for it. Whatever you love as adhesive, you can use in this book. I'm just going around the outside edges, and then I'm going to lay down some more lines because I want it to stick together pretty good. So I'm being liberal with my adhesive. Okay, I'm just going to bring it back over again and press it together. Okay, so now I have a double enforced piece for my cover. All right, we're going to do a little bit more scoring so that we can get this fold for our spine right there, okay? So I'm going to leave my scoring track where it is, put this in here, and I'm going to score it 5 3/8 from each end. And so this ruler up here, it makes it really easy to see the 3/8 inch marks and the 5/8 marks. It's really nice because not all cutting rulers have those. Okay, so 5 3/8, flip it over. So here's my first score line. Then we're going to go 5 3/8 from this side. Since that was double thick, I kind of ran my bone folder over it a few times, as you saw. And now I'm just going to do that same thing. I'm going to fold on the score lines, and I'm going to use my bone folder to crease it flat. So there's the front cover. There's the back cover. Okay, so now you can see we have the beginnings of our book. We have our front cover, our spine, and our back cover. Now we're going to need a way to bind it. And I chose to bind my album with just simple binding rings. And these little guys were just some I had around my house, actually. And they were silver, but I wanted them to match the beautiful copper rose gold foil that's in this paper. And so I spray painted them. So you can just use a little bit of metallic spray paint your binding rings, whatever color you want. So I just had those on hand. You can bind this if you don't have binding rings. You can bind it with yarn. You can bind it with ribbon. So instead of at the end when we bind everything, I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so now I'm just going to flip my tool around. I'll show you a little more clearly on the closer camera. So on this side, we have some different punches. So this we're going to use for a little bit later, but this one right here is just a hole punch for making the tops of our tags. And so I am going to take my spine and use that little hole punch to punch the holes for my binding rings. And what I found is that if I put this, these are 1 inch binding rings, and if I put my hole just inside, let me see, I want to make sure I do it right. So if I'm going to punch this side of the hole, I lined up my score line just before the 2 inch mark. And I know it's probably hard to see on on this camera, but right here, there's some little embossed measurements. I'll try and get it to where you can see it. Oh, you can kind of see them right there. They're really easy to see in person. They just are hard to see kind of on camera. So I'm going to line up right there their measurements. And so I'm going to line it up to the 2-inch, my score line to the 2-inch mark. And I'm just going to slip it under all 3 punches because that way it's nice and flat. And then I'm just going to punch. So you can see it punch that little hole right there in the spine. And then I'm going to move it to the other side and do the same thing. So now I'm going to line up this score line to this other 2 hole, or the 2 mark on the other side, because the measurements go out from center. It's a little tricky, but you'll get the hang of it. Just tricky getting it under all 3 punches. Okay, so now I've got 2 holes that are ready for my binding ring, and I'm just going to flip it over and I'm going to do the same exact thing on the other side. Find that 2-inch mark. Okay, so now our cover is ready for binding. The next thing we need to do for our cover is add a little slit right here for our closure band to go through. And so to do that, I'm just going to open this back up again. I'm going to flip this back over because I'm going to trim now rather than score. And I'm going to use, there's some little grooves on the cutting blade. There's some on the front and on the each end here. And they help you align if you're going to cut like in the middle of something, because you can line this up to the measurements on your ruler on the cutting arm. And there's a little score line right there. I think you can kind of see it right there. Okay, and then there's also some on the sides right here to help you line up and center your cuts. All right, so we're going to cut a 1 3/4 inch slit between the 2.5 and 3.5 mark. Okay, so I'm actually going to line this up to 1.5. And then I'm going to line up my trimmer to the 2.5 mark and just drop it down in and press. And then I'm going to watch my line on the side and the line on my ruler, and I'm going to go to 3.5. So now I have 1 little slit cut right there. Let me get my bone folder so you can see it. Okay. Now we need a second one for this escape route. So then I'm going to move it over just a little bit to, okay, I did that one at 1.5. Sorry, I'm confusing you. Now I just need one that's another 1/4 inch away so that the most inner one is at 1 3/4. Really, you can put your slit wherever you want to. That's just where I put mine. So I'm going to line it up at 2.5 again and just move it till the line on the blade matches the 3.5. So now I have my closure slit. Okay. This dark paper, I know it's kind of hard to see, so I'll use my scoring stylus to kind of help you. Okay. All right. So that is pretty much ready. Now we need to make our little band. And to do that, I've cut a strip of paper, and this is the beautiful double-sided, but I'm going to use this pink side. And I cut it to measure 1 3/4, or 1.5, excuse me, by 9 7/8. Okay. And then I'm just going to score it right down the middle. So I'm going to go to the 3/4 line. Score right down the middle. Now I didn't flip my track, but I probably should have to score, but I just held it. So that would keep it from sliding. Okay. Now I'm going to fold this in half. Use my bone folder again. Okay, so on my paper, I must have cut it a little bit too big, so I'm just going to trim that down just a little bit. You guys get to see all of the little errors, right? No big deal. You can just trim it up. So I'm just going to line up the straight edge with the cutting track and just carefully hold that in place. I love this little blade because it doesn't ever catch your fingers. It's a nice safety blade. So you can do those little tiny trims and it still works great. Okay, so now I have this band. And what I'm going to do is run a line of adhesive, because again, the band and the closure the cover and the closure are going to get a lot of wear as you open and close your mini album. So I like to double them up. And like I said before, if you wanted to, you could put a strip of cardstock inside of here as well, if you want even more reinforcement. You could do that in the cover too. Okay, so now I have my strip and I need to score it to match my cover. And to do that, it wraps all the way around the back and then just a little bit onto the front. Okay, is how I did mine. But you know what? You can do whatever you want with yours. I'm going to flip my track. And then I'm going to score this at 3 1/4 and 4 1/2. And what that's going to do is allow me to have that longer piece that's the same length as the back of my book. And then a little bit of a spot for the spine and then to the front cover. And then I'm just going to take my scissors and trim up the end into a point, because I found if I do that, I'm just kind of eyeballing it. You'll see that I don't always do things exactly perfect, but it's okay. Okay. And that little point makes it easier to slide into your album. So now all we need to do is adhere it to our album. So since this is going to get a lot of wear and it's on the outside of my album, I'm actually going to use double-sided tape to do this. You could use hot glue, just a stronger adhesive than the tape runner would be my suggestion, because I like it to really stay put. And I'm only going to put adhesive on the part that goes on the back of my book. Here's a little trick. If you use your bone folder, the backer comes off a lot easier. And another trick is I use a piercing tool to pull up the lip so that the backer comes off really nicely. Okay, so now I'm just going to line this up kind of with my closure and my spine so I know where I'm going. Almost did it the wrong way. Kind of got to go this way. Okay, so that I can eyeball it. Now you could find center on your trimmer and you could mark it. But like I said, sometimes I just eyeball it because I want to go fast. So it's up to you, your perfectionist level. And now I have this little closure that can just slip through the slits we made. Like that. So now we have our closure. And then the only other thing I did is I took one of these beautiful flowers, and you could choose really any flower that you like. This really pink ruffly one's pretty cute. And I just hot glued it right here. I kept my album closed and hot glued it to the portion that doesn't need to slide underneath the slit. And then I added a leaf. So that's what I did to just decorate my cover. You could leave it how it is. You could decorate it the way I did, whatever you want to do. Okay, let's move to the inside. Okay, this is my first page. So my granddaughter and daughter, the granddaughters and my daughter were visiting last spring right before COVID craziness happened. And we took these beautiful pictures of my granddaughters, Jane and Claire, in the fields out by my house. And so I wanted to do this little book because the colors worked and everything with this paper. I used their pictures. So let's start first with, and the picture sizes I used are, just so you know what fits in here. It's 2.5 by 3.5. And then I used bigger ones that are 3.5 by 5.5. Okay. So we're going to make this first page, which is a little pocket page, and then we'll make these tags. Okay, for the pocket page, I cut a piece of the patterned paper to measure, see how to do this so that you can still see that I can still work. Okay, this measures 4 3/4 by 7 7/8. Leave this on my scoring since I pre-cut. Now this paper has a top and a bottom. If you're using a paper that doesn't have, you know, an orientation, then it doesn't really matter which way you go, but I want to make sure that my top is to the left. And then I'm going to score for my pocket at 2 inches. And it's as simple as that. Now you have a pocket. Now we just need a little adhesive. And I love this super, super skinny double-sided tape. They have a lot of different double-sided tape options at Michael's, so you can find something there that's an adhesive that you love. For pockets, I love this because it's so skinny. It's an 1/8 inch wide. I'm just going to do that same trick where I bone fold it down, grab my piercing tool, pull off the backers, and then just fold it up. Okay, now I need to punch the holes so that we can put it in our binding. And we're just going to use the same hole punch that we used before. And I'm going to punch on the left side. And I have found that my pages, so my cover is 6 inches tall, but I did all of my pages at 5 7/8 inch tall so that the pages wouldn't peek out the top and bottom as much. So I found that I have to go a little bit inside 1 inch to make the holes line up. So what I found is if I just line up the edge, the bottom of my paper, right with the edge of the punch, that is the perfect spot. So I'm just going to punch it there, slide it down, line it up on the other side right on the edge, and punch it there. And now the holes are going to line up with my binding rings in my album. Okay, so now we have our pocket page. It's ready. Now we just need to make our little tags. So you can see these, the tags I kind of just adhered to the back of the photo. And then these are those awesome thicker stickers that I just used to spell out my granddaughter's names on the tag itself. So they're really fun and dimensional, give it a fun little look. And I also liked how dark they were, so I went with black. So to make the tags, I'm gonna flip this back around, change my track back to cutting. And then I'm going to pull out from the bottom, you can kind of see on the bottom here, that there is a little guide that's hiding on the bottom. Also, these are 2 little magnets that we're gonna use later. So I'm gonna slide this out, and you can see there's a slit on the side. So you don't really have to turn it upside down to get it. You can just slide it in and out. And it has magnets on it because the deck of this is magnetized. So here's the cool thing about this guide. This guide is what allows us to make envelopes, banners, and tags, and any diagonal cut. All the measurements you need for your paper sizing are right on this guide, and the instructions are right on the back. So I love the instruction book that comes with the Works tool. It's really informative and really good, but if you don't have it on hand and you need a reminder of the instructions, they're right there on the back. Okay, so at the top, we have these little grooved teeth. And they match up with the score lines on my trimmer. And to make a tag, the very far right one is the tag mark. You can kind of see that. It's upside down to you guys, but you can see that tag, envelope, banner, okay? And on the deck of the cutting tool, there's tag, envelope, banner marks. So I'm just gonna line up the little triangle that's tag to tag, which puts it right there, okay? And then I'm going to take my little pieces that I've cut. These I cut to 3 3/4 by 2 1/4 for the size tag I wanted to make. But you can make literally any size tag that you want in any shape top you want. So to do that, I'm just going to set it here. So now you can see that it's holding my page diagonal to my trim line, which makes it really easy. And what I found is I wanted to cut about that much off. So I just lined it up to about 1 1/2, but you could see how it just makes your corner more of a point, or I could come down to here. If you wanted to, that's how you could also cut this little thing that I freehanded with my scissors. You could cut that using the tag guide. Okay, I'm gonna cut it about right there. So I'm gonna go at 1 1/4. Okay, now I'm going to save these little corners, and you might think I'm weird, but I'm going to use them in just a second. I'm going to show you why I saved them. Now you flip it over this way to do the other side the same. And so I'm going to line up the top to that 1 1/4 again, and I'm going to cut. And now I have a perfectly symmetrical tag top, just like that. And then we're just going to use this side again that we've been using the tag hole punch for other things. We're going to use it for a tag actually this time. So we're going to go into here, and I'm going to use the centering ruler to help me find center. Just place my tag as close to center as I can get, and then punch a hole. And then I just repeated that and did it again with my other color. So I ended up with 2 tags to put in my pocket. For time, I'm not going to do that second one. But you can see that that's how I got those 2 in there. Okay, and then I just added a little bit of ribbon to the top. I just threaded it straight through the hole and tied a bow with some navy blue embroidery floss at the top to hold the ribbon in place. Added those names. And then what's nice about this is I can go back and I can write about Jane and Claire on the back of these tags and photos. You could even cover the back of your photo before you adhere it to the tag with some of that beautiful pattern paper if you wanted it to be a different color than just the white. That would look really beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to tuck those inside. And then the last thing that I did was I just, I
have a couple of questions before you move forward.
Okay, cool.
There is a question if there are replacement blades.
There are. Yep, there are replacement blades.
And then
this one stays sharp pretty long, but yeah.
The other question is, as far as the binder goes, if you could repeat the measurement.
The measurement on the binding?
Actually the binding.
Oh, the binder, the whole book?
Yes, yes.
Yes, so this was just a 12 by 12 piece of paper folded in half. So it's actually 6 inches tall. And then let's see how wide it is. It's about 5.5 wide. And so I found that the maximum size for my pages, I made a note of it, is you need it to be 5 7/8 tall. And that's important because of where we put our binding rings. It has to be tall enough to catch into those binding rings. So 5 7/8 tall by 4 3/4 about wide. But you can see I have all different size pages in here. And so you can use different sizes because I like in mine for them to kind of stagger. So as long as you're 5 7/8 inch tall so that you catch the binding rings, you can make the width of your pages whatever you want under about 5 inches. Does that help?
I think so. I don't see any other at this moment.
Okay, awesome. Oh, I see a comment. These are my granddaughters. So yeah, they're my little sweet 6 and 3-year-old granddaughters. They're my light of my life. Someone asked if they were my kids. I wish they were here all the time, but they live far away, so it's sad. And then I added a little flower on here, and then I wanted to show you what I did with these little corners we kept off of our tags. Okay, so here's those little corners that it's kind of like you'd normally just chuck those. I used them on the next page, and all I did on the back was add a photo, but then I used those little corners from my tag as photo corners. So I don't know if you can see that very well, but see those little corners? Those are the photo corners that I just added. Those are just the pieces I cut off my tags. But they coordinate and they look cute and they make that page feel finished with very little effort. Okay, next page. This one we're going to do a little bit of stamping. Now I could just put this away back down in here again, like down into its spot. But since I'm going to be using it so much, I'm just going to leave it out. Okay, I'm going to need our stamping deck. And for this page, I did a page that measures 5 7/8 by 4 inches wide. So that's like how I was talking about how sometimes I like them skinnier. That's what I did, is a little bit skinnier. Now I'm going to flip this over and just grab those magnets off the back because they really help with stamping. Okay, I'm going to place my page where I want it. I'm going to do this one without the photo. When I actually did mine, I adhered the photo first so that the stamping could come down over the edge of the photo, but I'm just going to skip that part and just show you guys how to stamp. But you could stamp it before, you could stamp it over the photo. It works great either way. So you can see these magnets grab and they hold my paper right where I want it to be. And then my stamping deck is going to go right over the top. Okay, I'm going to actually move this down a little bit. Especially when I was stamping over the photo, I found if I moved it down away from this edge just a little bit, like about to the 2-inch, this has a grid measurement on it as well. If you line that up to like the 2-inch mark, I could get a little bit more even pressure on this one floral stamp. I don't know if it's the stamp, but it's it liked it a little bit lower on the deck. Okay, so how I place my stamps, I just pulled this acrylic stamp off the sheet. I like to actually just gently lift that up, place it where I want on my paper, and then actually use this piece to pick my stamp up. So now you can see my stamp is on my stamping deck. Okay, and then I'm just using an ink pad. This is just one that I had around, but Michael's has awesome inks. So you can use any color you want. I just went with black just to keep it simple, since I was using all those darks. And I just ink it right on there, tapping it on. And this magnet's there. You can see that magnet holds it right in place so I can get perfect stamping. And then I'm just going to press down and lift up. Now you can see, don't worry. See what I was saying about how it can kind of skip? I think it actually might be this particular stamp. But no worries, because I can just re-ink my stamp and do it again, because it's holding, those magnets are holding my paper in exactly the right spot. And I left my stamp on my deck, so it's exactly in the same spot. Another trick you can do with stamping. You know, sometimes these stamps, they don't like to cooperate. I love acrylic stamps, but sometimes they are a little uneven. Oh, still not going. So, okay, I'm going to try one more thing. So you can build up underneath your stamp. So I am going to just take some of these. I had some extra pictures. Just to lift it up, you can build up a little bit. So you're learning a little trick in my troubleshooting here. I don't usually have this problem, so I'm thinking it might just be this particular floral stamp. Okay. Again, nothing's really moved because I kept my magnets there. I kept my paper in the spot and I just set it underneath. See if this does it. Okay. Those stamps are a little uneven. Sometimes if you just lift it up a little, yeah, it's got to be the stamp. I've stamped other stamps from this set and had no problem. Okay, final trick you get to see. I'm going to actually just stamp it right on this surface and see if I can get more pressure on it. It's not a good reflection of the tool, you guys. I don't usually have this problem. It's got to be an uneven stamp. Ah! Okay, so now you learned how to troubleshoot because now I finally got my stamp, which is why I love acrylic stamps, because I could look through that clear stamping plate and see exactly where I was going to do it, even off of the base deck. Okay, so that just allowed me to get even more pressure up from above without any give on my plate. But I don't usually have the problem on the We Are tool doing that. I think that that stamp is just a little uneven. It's probably just a fluke. Yeah.
There's a question, want to know if the magnets come with the cutting board.
Yes, they do. Everything I'm using today comes with the board. So it all comes with it. Everything is on the back. So where I pulled them off the back, that's where they'll be when you open up your tool. And they're nice because they have this little flap, so they're easy to pick up because they're really strong magnets. Okay, I'm just cleaning my stamp with a baby wipe. And that's what I usually do. I just kind of wipe off my clear stamping plate. And then I'm going to set that aside because I'm going to use this some more. So then all I did to finish mine off, you could leave it just black and white because that's really pretty in the album as well. But I just used a little bit of colored pencil that I just had, you know, just like regular old colored pencils. And I just colored in the flower a little bit pink and a little bit green. And then I added a little strip of pink just at the bottom because I just liked how that looked. So you could do that. You could leave it plain. It's up to you. And then on the back, I just added another 5.5 by 3.5 photo. And I didn't even embellish it at all, but I did add it before I punched the holes in my page. So I would say if you have a photo that's going to go all the way over past the hole punches, it's best to adhere it on there first so that when you hole punch it, your holes are perfectly lined up. Okay, we're going to move to this next page, which is a envelope page. So I'm going to open this up and show you what it looks like. So you can see I tied it closed with string, but when you open it up, I have all these photos of Jane and Claire tucked inside. You could tuck in a letter, you could tuck in photos, you could tuck in journaling cards, whatever you wanted to do to tuck in. And I just made an extra little hole in my envelope so that I could thread my string through. This is just embroidery floss, navy blue embroidery floss. And this is just a little image from the cut apart sheet on the paper pad. And I just tied a little bow to hold it shut. Okay, so let's make an envelope. Let me find my stamp so I can put this back on it. I'll just set it over there. I kind of made a mess with my ink pad. I dropped it. Okay, so we're going to use this tool again. We don't really need our magnets for this, so I'm just going to put them back on the back where they were. They'll be right there. That's where they live. And I'm going to pull this out, and now I'm going to line up the envelope mark to the envelope mark on the board, which is at 3 inches. Okay, and here's where I'm going to use this guide on the front. I wanted my envelope to measure a 3.5 by 5.5 envelope. So I just came down here and I found 3.5 by 5.5 inch card size, which is going to be the right size for my envelope. And it says to cut a 7 1/8 by a 7 1/8 inch paper. So that's what I did. So here's my navy paper. And I already cut that to 7 1/8 by 7 1/8. Then the next line on the guide says alignment guide, and it says 2 7/8. And this is the alignment guide ruler that we used before for our tag. That's what that's called, the alignment guide. And so I'm going to first line up my envelope at the, what did it say? 2 7/8 mark. So I'm going to line it up right there at the 2 7/8 mark. Okay, and now we're going to score for our envelope. Now, this is a spot where some people get tripped up, so pay attention on this part because I've tripped myself up before. So the first score line is going to be right alongside the guide, straight down that 2-inch scoring line, okay, with the corner of my paper to the guide measurement. So here's my first score, okay. Then I'm going to rotate my paper, and instead of lining up this corner at 2 7/8, the rest of the scores for the envelope are actually going to line up right here. And this says score guide, and it has a little notch. Okay, you can see that little line. I'm just going to line up that first score line to that score guide. So that's where people get tripped up, is they keep going back to this line. After the first one, you go here. Okay, then I'm going to go in that same 2-inch track score line, and I'm going to rotate, and I'm going to pay attention to my score line, and I'm going to put it up here in the score guide and do it again. Once you get the hang of it, you'll see it's actually really easy, but for some reason our brains just want to go back to that guide line, and we don't need it after the first one. Okay, so now I've got all of my lines scored on my envelope. I'll kind of bend them so you can see where they are. Okay, and I've got my corners, so you can see these are going to come in, this is going to come up. Okay, but I need these little extra corners trimmed out, and that is when we're going to use our envelope punch. Flip this around, and this last one right here is our envelope punch, and it's labeled on there so you can see that. And we're just going to slip our paper under there, and this little fin, I guess, that's coming off of the punch is a guide that you want aligned with your score lines. So you're just going to align your score line to that little marker that's coming out and punch. And now you can see it's punched that little corner out for me. Okay, and I'm just going to rotate it and do it on each juncture where the two score lines meet. Okay, so now I can fold that really easily because it's not bound up in the corners. The last thing I want to do is I want mine to have rounded tips instead of pointy tips. And on the flip side of the envelope punch, there is a corner rounder. So you just slip it in, and it's the same button, but on the other side, it rounds the corner. And you can use that to round the corners of your pages as well, which is what I did on actually a lot of the pages in my album. I rounded the corners using this little punch. Okay, now we're ready to assemble our envelope. So now we just bone fold all our score lines. And I'm going to put some adhesive here. You can use whatever adhesive you like again. Just going to use tape runner for speed of time in class. Okay, so now you can see on this particular envelope, I actually have this little flap coming up from the bottom. If you like it like that, just don't put adhesive there. Or you can trim it off with scissors. Or what I like to do is I just take my adhesive all the way to the top, and then I just fold it down and adhere it to the inside. So now it's got this little pocket. The last thing I need to do is punch my hole. So again, using this one a lot today, I'm just going to center that up as best I can. Kind of hard from where I am. So you can see and get my hole. And then I would do the same to punch my holes here in my envelope, lining it out to the outside edges. And then I have my envelope that's ready to go. And I just added a little cut apart piece and the string and filled it with whatever you want. So there's the envelope page. On the back, to hold my string in place, I just added another of the smaller photos there. This is a cut apart piece from this sheet of paper. So you can see that trick I did to just cut out using just the marks on the blade. I did that again here just to cut that one piece out to keep those all intact in case I want to use the backside for something else. You can just cut up your whole sheet if you want to, but that is right there. And I rounded the corners with my corner punch. On the back, I just added a little strip of pink cardstock before I hole punched my binding and added one more photo. This one is a little expanding tag page. And I wanted to show you this one because it's super fun, because you don't have to just have individual tags. You can do something like this, where your tags fold out. So I'm going to show you how to do that one real quick. It's super easy. Okay. So I have cut my piece. To measure, oops, sorry, I got to flip to the right page, 12 inches wide. So it's the full 12 inches by 5 7/8, because that's going to be my height of my tag, okay? And then I am going to score it at 1 inch. Okay. Since this is directional paper, I again have to pay attention since I want my leaves going the right direction, up. So the 1 inch mark is actually going to be on this side. So I'm going to flip it over so that the top stays correct, okay? And then I'm going to score it at, just if you have directional paper, pay attention to that. So I'm going to score it at 1, score it at 2, and then I'm going to score it at 4.5. Now you can see the scoring lines only go up to 6, and I need additional score lines on this side, but to do that, I need to flip it over because I'll run out of spaces, and I'm going to score it at 2.5, and I'm going to score it at 5. Okay, so now we're going to accordion fold this. Oh, and even when I said pay attention, I did mine upside down. Luckily, they're mostly covered with photos. Okay, so now you can see kind of the workings of our accordion fold right here. So for this one, I'm just going to adhere this down. This is just to kind of reinforce the edge as it goes into the binding and to bring that back color forward. And that's where I would punch my holes for my binding, is in that 1 inch spot. And then to make this a tag, I'm going to grab this again, line up my tag markings on the guide and on the board. And I'm just going to take this piece and I'm going to fold it to the back for a second. And I'm going to cut this side. And the reason I'm folding it to the back is I want this width to be the same on both sides, and that little extra flap will interfere with that. So I'm going to fold it over here and just use this guide ruler again. And I'm going to take the top of my tag and align it at the 1 1/4 mark. And I'm going to cut. And this is, you can see how many layers I have in there, right? Just push down a little bit, go back and forth across it a couple times, and look how awesome that trimmer is. Takes it right off. Okay, and on this side, now I'm going to open it back up, align this mark to the 1 1/2 again, or 1 1/4, excuse me. And I'm only going to cut down to this score line because I want to keep my binding. The reason I had to do this extra binding is, remember, I need the part that goes bound into my rings to be 5 7/8 tall, but my tag would be missing that corner, so it wouldn't allow me to bind it. So that's why I did this extra little piece right here. So I'm going to watch where my blade mark is, and I'm going to just come only down to that mark right there. Okay, let me do it one more time. So then I'm going to move my guide, and I'm just going to trim this last little bit out. Let me just line that up and only go down to the tag. Okay. And then I have my tags already, and then I just have to punch a hole. So I'm just going to slip that in there, punch a hole through all. You could do each piece individual, or you can, which I find is a little easier, do 2 at a time and punch the holes. But as long as you center it using those centering marks, your holes are going to be all lined up so that you can slip that little piece of embroidery floss that I had in there holding it shut. That will hold it shut, and then you can untie it and open it up. Now, you didn't have to do all photos. You could do cut apart pieces. You could do journaling cards, whatever you wanted to do inside that fun interactive tag. So fun, huh? And really easy. Okay, on the next one I did just another piece of the paper that I cut down to a size that I liked, 5 7/8 tall, and I added a little phrase. And I chose this paper because the back has lines on it, which made it really, really easy for me to do journaling right there on it. For this one, it's a file folder. Just when you thought this tool couldn't do anything else, we're going to make a file folder. Okay. So this tool can make the folders in at the top, middle, side, wherever you want to. And it has markings on the side that might be kind of tricky to see on camera. They're really easy to see in person, but they're kind of like, you can kind of see those measurement lines in there. And those are a guide to help you with your tab placement, okay? And all of those instructions are exactly in the instruction booklet that comes with the tool. So the first time you make tabs, just refer to that and then you'll get the hang of it. Okay, again, this is a directional paper. It has a top and a bottom, not this side so much, but this side does. So I'm gonna make sure that my fold is right. So this time I'm gonna fold in this way. So yes, that is correct. And I'm going to score. So I'm gonna flip that track over, find my stylus. And I'm going to score, this is an 8 1/4 by 5 7/8 inch piece of paper. And I'm going to score it at 3 3/8 with my inside print facing up and the top at the top. Okay, so now I've got my flap that's going to fold over. And now we're going to make this little tab on the side. How we do that, we're going to flip it. Actually, I need that open. We're going to flip it over to this side. I'm trying to turn so you can kind of see on this side camera. Okay, so this is my tab. So this is the tab punch and it's labeled. And to do a top tab, I just want it right exactly at the top. And to do that, I just align it exactly with the little stopper guide in the tool. I want my hand to get in the way. And punch it. And so that's just basically rounded that one corner. Now I'm going to flip it over and you can do small, medium, or large tabs. And you can see there's a little marking on the tool right here that shows you where to line up that corner you just did for an end tab. I'm going to go to medium and punch it again. So now see what I have is this little notch. See the beginnings of the tab right there? Now I just have to trim away that excess paper. So I'm going to flip this around. The end tabs, top and bottom tabs, are super easy. I'm going to flip this back to trimming, and I'm just going to look through that little notch and find it and line it up with my track. And again, I'm just going to bring my ruler down to just there, and you can feel it. You can feel when it hits that mark, and you just stop. So now we have a little tabbed file folder. I don't know if you can see that. And it's at the top. So how do we do a center one? So I'm going to show you that. So the center one is mine. I cut because I wanted them to kind of stagger out like that. So it's a little bit bigger than my front flap. So it would stagger out. So you can just do them all the same if you want. Then you would have a little row of tabs that weren't staggered. On mine, I staggered it up a little bit. Okay, and for this one, I am going to, it's 5 7/8 tall, so it's really close to 6, because the measurements on here are by inch. So it says 4 inch, 5 inch, 6 inch, 7 inch. So I'm going to go to this, use the 6 inch guide for my tab, and I'm going to line it up on the medium mark. So there's a 6 at the top and then small, medium, large on the side. So I'm going to slip that under there, lining up the end to the medium mark, and I'm going to punch. Okay, so now you can see it's kind of centered. And then I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to line it up again on this mark. And now I have my center tab. And now I do the same thing. I just trim those away. I'll line it up right there. Trim down. Trim up. And now I have my center tab. And then the last one, I did just another end tab just on the other end. And that's how I got that. And then I just wrapped a little piece of a scrap. I have this little scrap of paper, and I just want it, and I added some ribbon to a little clip to hold it closed, but then it opens up like this. And I stamped on these, and I added a little bit about each girl. You could journal on the back. You could cover the back with pattern paper. I just put some of their favorite things on there, and then held it closed with this little shaped paper clip that I just had laying around. And this little banner strip, I carried all the way around to the other side and just overlapped my photo. And how I dovetailed this is another little trick I found that I want to show you real quick. So you could take any scrap width, and you can use your envelope punch that does the little notches out of the corners of my envelope, and I just center that up on there and punch it, and it does a little dovetail for you. So from my angle, I'm not centering it very well, but you'll do a better job when you can look at it directly. Okay, and you can see that it centers up your little dovetail for you. And then I just wrapped that around the page, held it with a clip. So even the things that aren't, there's so many things this tool can do that aren't even in the book, the instruction book. And if you play with it, you can find even more things you can do. Okay, on this page, just to keep flipping through so you know what I did, this is just the back of my file folders. I just added that photo, my banner coming over the edge, added some of those beautiful florals. This one was a scrap from when I made my envelope piece. So I had that's the outside of my envelope piece. The inside had this pretty cut apart wreath that was already cut to exactly this size. So I just put that page right in. I wrapped it with a little bit of a yarn bow and tucked some leaves in and added a photo. On the back, just went over my yarn again with a photo. And then I'm going to show you how to do this little pocket page that's an angled pocket page. Okay. So you can see there's 2 photos tucked into there. So you can pull those out. So we're going to make this little pocket page. And this is kind of like how you would make a banner. It's very, very similar. Find the right paper. All right. I have a cheat sheet over here, so I got to make sure I tell you the right measurements. Okay, so this piece is the size of 11 3/4 by 4 3/4. And again, I need to make sure that my height is 5 7/8. And so I'm going to score from the top. So this is the top at 5 7/8. And that's the base of my pocket, the inside of my pocket. Okay. Doesn't look like a pocket yet. Okay, so now I need to cut this piece at an angle. So how are we going to do that? So we're going to take our little guide, put it back in here, and you can really put it at any straight marking. When you do banners, you'll see it's really at a sharp angle. And for this one, we just need, I usually just put it at the tag again, but this is a similar cut to the banner. Okay, and then I'm going to decide where I want my pocket to lay. And this is going to allow you to cut. So this piece is the back of your pocket, right? So you kind of just line it up wherever you want to. I think I did mine. I think I lined up my score line at 5 inches when I did mine, if you want to do it the same as me. But really, you can just do it how you can kind of eyeball it however you like. And then I'm just going to do that same thing that we did on the little corners of the tag, but it's just going to cut off this piece right here. And then I'm just going to put adhesive along this one side, hold it up, and now I have my pocket page. And then I just liked a little definition since this was pink and pink on both sides. I just went ahead and added a strip of a piece of navy blue to give the pocket a little bit more definition. Again, I stamped on it, stamped the words from the stamp set, added some floral. Another tip for you as I'm showing you this floral, I kind of wanted to show you that I kind of stagger them. I do one kind of at the bottom and then some bolt kind of at the top and then one at the bottom and then one at the top, one kind of in the middle. And if you do that, when you close your book at the end, it'll be a lot more lined up. Because if you do them all at the bottom, your book's going to like tilt toward the top, right? Because those are bulky flowers, but they just look so beautiful in there. So that's all it was. Easy pocket. Now you can save this piece
for you.
Sure.
Brittany is asking, can the tool make envelopes the same size as regular envelopes?
Yes, it can make envelopes from 3 by 3 up to 7 by 7 in a, like, I don't know, 2 whole rows of sizes. It's a whole bunch of sizes. I made them all one time and it was a big stack of envelopes, and it makes great big ones, teeny tiny little square ones, it makes all different ones.
Okay. She's also asking,
awesome.
Can the tool make a folder larger than what's currently being displayed? So I think it's kind of maybe the same question.
Yes. Yes, it can. You can make the tabs in any size, the folders in any size, just depending on what size you cut your paper to. Yeah, and you can make a tag in any size, and the banners can be made from 3 inches to 7.5 inches. So I'm not really showing you a banner today, but that's the scale of those. So itty bitty, like cupcake topper size, up to 7.5 inches size. So there is quite a wide range of what you can make with it. You can make tiny to big. In my last class, I said, think small, think big, think everything in between with this tool, because you can do it all. It's awesome. And so again, I wanted to make sure that you guys knew this is the piece I cut off my pocket. Save that because you can just adhere the side and bottom of that to another page really simply and make another pocket. So you get 2 pockets out of 1 cut. So see, if I wanted to, I could put that on another page going the other way, or I could go this way again, right? Beauties of double-sided paper. Were there any more questions on that, Felicia, though, before I jump forward to this last page?
The only other question is, I think, how you may have put the binder rings on, but I'm not for sure if you are there at that point.
I can show you. I can show you. So just the last flip through, I know we only have a few minutes left. On this last page, I did a little belly band. So I just cut up the striped paper that was in the pad. You can kind of see that striped paper. I just cut it and put a band, made another tag, added some stickers. And I wanted to show you how to do this little border real quick. I'm just going to use a scrap. Well, here, I'll use this. Okay, and that is, again, the envelope punch. And I just started at one end and just punched and then moved that over to the end again and punched. So this is something that's not in the instructions, but I wanted to show you. You can make a little kind of scalloped border if you keep going along with that punch. Isn't that fun? So that's how I did the edge of that page. So let's quickly do the binding rings, and I'll show you how to put it together. Okay, so I take my rings and I start with just my cover itself, and the top holes, I like to have this little hinge part. There's like that little hinge that's on the binding ring. I like that to be inside the back of my book. So I start with it like this. I just kind of hold it at the hinge. I go out the right hole at the top and back into my book through the left hole on the top. Now you see how I have that ring kind of sitting in there. Okay, so it just slipped out the back. I'll show you again on this side with the close-up camera. Okay, so I'm holding the little hinge. There's that little hinge. I'm gonna hold it. I'm gonna go in the right hole, or out the right hole, in the left hole, and then I'm gonna stop when that hinge hits the hole. Okay, and then you just add your pages. So you just slip them on, lining up the holes with the rings. And the rings kind of shift a little when you do this. Okay, here's my envelope page. So you just build them on, adding up all your pages. I didn't punch holes in all the ones we made, but when they're all in, then you just close the binding rings and flip everything over and you have your little book. Now, why I said that you didn't have to use the ring is you could thread ribbon through that hole the same way and then thread the ribbon through the pages and tie a bow on the outside, and you would have a cute little ribbon binding or a string binding. So you could do it that way as well. I just did binding rings because it's really fast and easy. And I like bookbinding and I like using other textiles to bind my seams, but I just really liked how that looked. Plus I wanted this little ring. I think we're almost out of time, but I just want to show you that when you get your tool, or if you have your tool, 3 more things that this tool can make are pom-poms, tassels, there's the tassel, and bows. And so I just made a tiny pom-pom, a tiny tassel, and a tiny bow, and tied them all on to my top binding ring on the outside of my cover. And it just gives just a little bit more fun. And I'll show you, I know we're out of time, so I can't really show you how to do it in person, but right here on your tool, you pull these little pegs out, and they're these little clear plastic pegs, and you can separate them apart into 4. And they just go into these holes. And that, when you look at the instruction book, it's so easy to follow. They just stand in here, and to make a tassel, you wrap it around here and then you tie off the top. To make a pom-pom, see, you can make them again, itty bitty to that big, okay? And you can make a tiny pom-pom by putting your pegs really close together. You can make a big one like this, and you just wrap, wrap, wrap. For pom-poms, you only need 2, just wrap it, tie it in the middle and trim it up, and you get that fun pom-pom. So, and then the bows are the same way. The instructions are really clear. You just wrap it around, and you tie a bow, and you have this perfectly spaced bow that is exactly the same on both sides of your loop. And then these little pegs.
You have just enough time if you need to go over a little bit in order to show it works.
Show one? Okay. Do they want to see tassel or pom-pom?
I'll wait on them to let me know. Pom-pom. Fun.
Pom-pom? Okay, we'll do a pom-pom. Okay, so I'm going to use 2 pegs for pom-pom. You use 3 pegs for a tassel, but it's done very, very similarly. Okay, so this is just some fun peach yarn I found at Michael's. And to start my pom-pom, I'm going to go on this 1 peg, and I'm just going to do a little overhand knot. We're going to trim this off later, so it doesn't matter that there's a knot there. Okay, it just helps you hold your string in place as you're working. Okay, and then you're just going to wrap.
And while you're wrapping, I just want you to know that there are a lot of positive comments about the tool. There's been some that have already purchased the tool while you were working. And so
awesome. You guys are going to love it. It's so fun.
Awesome of a teacher you are as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I love being in class with you guys. Thank you so much. I love that you guys are excited to make things, because for me, it really is something that makes me really happy. And with all the crazy in the world, I know we all need some time to just kind of decompress and do something fun for someone else or for ourselves, right? We get benefit. Even if you give away what you make, it benefits you and them. Okay, so however many times you wrap around this peg determines about how full your pom-pom is. For this size, I just wrapped it about 40 times, but I didn't really count because I was listening to you guys. But you just kind of get a feel for it as you make them, how fat you like your pom-poms. And then I just cut another length of string, and I'm going to slip it underneath my little yarn bundle now that's on my pegs. Bring it up to the top. And I'm going to do a square knot. So I'm going to do it tight. You want this tight, but don't break your yarn. That's the finding the sweet spot. Okay. One thing I like to do, you could just stop there, but I hate it when my pom-poms fall apart. And this is what holds your whole pom-pom together. So you got to wrap around, and I do it again. Just because I am like, I hate it when I've gone to all the work of a pom-pom and the center comes apart. Okay, I'm going to do 3 knots on this side. So I did a square knot. So I did over, under, left over, right, right over, left, left over, right. Okay, and now I'm going to leave this string on here because this is going to help us in a minute. So just leave that there. And I'm going to slip this off the pegs. So now you have this. It kind of looks like a little bow, right? So you could just do a yarn bow like that too if you wanted to, I guess. But now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to find the little opening in the loop. I'm going to stick my scissors in there. Okay, so see that the little loops? And it's okay if you miss some because you can go back and catch them again. And I'm just going to cut the ends. There's a couple I missed. Okay, cut through. Through both sides, cutting all through. So now you can see why it was so important to me that my center be really, really tight. Okay, now these are the strings I left on, and you can see how they help me. They're my little handle. Okay, and you gotta fluff these guys up. Okay, now this guy, it needs a haircut. That's what we always call it here at the studio where we work. Because see how like misshapen he is? And you want him to be this happy little tight, sweet pom-pom, right? So he needs a haircut. He's too shaggy. So then I just take my scissors, and don't be afraid. You're going to cut off a lot. This makes a giant, fun, fluffy mess. It'll look like you gave a poodle a haircut in your house. A very colorful poodle. If you're doing lots of colors. Oh, there's one more loop I missed. See how easy it is to just snip them again when you find them? Okay, and so I'm going to just try tilting my scissors and kind of cutting at an angle. And you just keep going. This just takes a little practice. The more pom-poms you make, the faster you'll be at trimming. But you can see I'm trimming a lot off, and it's starting to take shape. The tighter you trim it, the smaller it gets, but also the more dense the pom-pom becomes because you get to that center where the yarn is really held super tight. Okay, and I would just keep trimming, 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 and I hold it at all different angles, and I just look for little spots where it's poking out. Shake it off. When you shake it off, a few more little stray hairs will pop out. And there you have your little pom-pom. Okay, I would probably keep trimming this guy just a little bit more till I got it down to about this density. So it's like super puffy and tight. That's the way I like my pom-poms. If you like yours to be a little bit more shaggy, like these are sometimes fun when you're doing pom-pom rugs and things like that, where they're a little bit more hairy. They're fun. So just do whatever you like. And that's how you do a pom-pom. And a tassel is very, very similar. You just have another peg in here, and you tie off the top because you know your little tassel has that little loop at the top. So you just tie it under the 2 pegs and then cut the bottom loop on the bottom, and that makes your tassel. It's very similar and very easy. You guys are gonna love this tool. I hope that you enjoy it. I hope that you learned something today that made you wanna create something beautiful, and I am excited to see you again in a future class.